On my 63rd birthday, my son drove me past the edge of the map, stopped by a ruined house with a crooked porch, set my bag on a nail-bitten step, and said, "This is your gift. You live here now?" He didn't stay to watch the dust settle. He didn't notice the second mailbox half buried under vines. He didn't see the silhouette already crossing the weeds toward me, a stranger who knew my name before I spoke it, and knew exactly how to take my son's gift apart, piece by ugly piece. If you're here for real stories about dignity clawing its way back, hit subscribe, tell me where you're listening from, and settle in, because he never knew who my neighbor was. And that changed everything. It happened on my birthday. Not a surprise party, not flowers, just a long drive that didn't feel like love anymore. Ethan said he wanted to take me somewhere peaceful. His smile didn't reach his eyes, and I noticed he kept glancing at his watch instead of the road. We'd barely spoken since his last argument with Abby. Something about money, though in that house, it was always about money. The car smelled of his cologne, sharp and sterile, the kind that erases every trace of warmth. Outside, the fields gave way to dirt roads, then to nothing but the hum of tires over gravel. I asked where we were going. He said, "You'll see. It's a surprise." He was right about that part. When the car stopped, I thought he'd taken a wrong turn. The house looked dead, one broken shutter hanging like a loose tooth, windows fogged from the inside, a porch that leaned as if it was tired of holding itself up. "This is it," he said, forcing cheer into his voice. "This?" He nodded. "Fresh air, quiet, no more stress from the city. You'll love it." There was a suitcase in the back seat. My suitcase. I hadn't packed it. He carried it to the porch, set it down beside a rotted railing, and pulled a folded paper from his jacket. "The utilities work. Well, mostly. The roof leaks a bit. Just keep the phone charged when there's a signal." I tried to laugh, waiting for him to say it was a joke. He didn't. He didn't even meet my eyes. "Ethan," I whispered, "what are you doing?" He looked past me into the trees. "Mom, you've been difficult lately. Abby's pregnant. We need space. This will be good for you. Peaceful. Think of it as—" He hesitated, like he couldn't find a word that didn't sound cruel. Then he said it anyway. "A gift." The word fell like something sharp. He leaned in, kissed the air near my cheek, and turned back to the car. Gravel crunched under his shoes. "Ethan!" He didn't stop. The engine roared, spitting dust and pebbles. I stood there, clutching the strap of my bag like it could anchor me to something real. The car grew smaller, then disappeared around the bend, and then there was only silence, a kind of silence that hums in your bones. The wind moved through dry grass, lifting little ghosts of dust around my shoes. The house creaked, like it remembered people once lived here and wasn't sure if it wanted them back. Something inside me made a sound I didn't recognize. Not a sob, not anger. A click. Cold. Precise. Like a lock turning the other way for the first time in years. For the first time since my husband passed, I didn't feel small. I felt awake. I picked up the suitcase and pushed the front door open. It stuck halfway, swollen by rain. The air inside was thick with dust and old wood. The floorboards complained with every step. There was one chair, a warped table, and a cracked mirror hanging on a nail. I saw my own reflection, older than I remembered, tired but not broken. "Peaceful," I muttered. "Right." Outside, the wind shifted. I heard something, faint, like a gate creaking open. I stepped onto the porch and saw a figure by the fence line. Tall, still, watching. He raised a hand, not in greeting, more like acknowledgement. Then he turned and disappeared behind a stand of cedar trees. For a moment, I thought I was imagining it. But the sound of his boots on gravel was real. Someone lived nearby. The sun was sliding behind the hills when I walked around back. There was a well, old and crooked, with a rusted crank. I pressed down, it moved. The chain groaned, and somewhere deep below I heard the splash of water. Hope is a strange thing. It doesn't shout, it whispers. That night, I built a fire in the potbelly stove with what little dry wood I found. Smoke curled toward the ceiling, stinging my eyes but warming the room. I opened my bag. Someone had packed a robe, 2 towels, and my medication. Thoughtful in a mechanical way, like guilt checking a box. At the bottom, I found my old flip phone. No internet, just numbers I memorized years ago. Mr. Patel from the bank, and Arjun, the young lawyer who helped me with Paul's estate. No bars. The valley was a pocket of silence, but I could still see a ridge to the east where the sky held a faint shimmer, the promise of a signal. I stood in the doorway, the cold biting my fingers, and looked toward that ridge. Tomorrow I'll climb it. I didn't know what I'd say yet. I just knew I'd say something. I sat by the fire until the logs gave up their last bit of light. I tried to cry, but nothing came. Maybe the tears had been used up years ago, back when Ethan first told me to stop being dramatic after I sold my wedding ring to pay his rent. Maybe I'd already done all my crying in silence. When I finally lay down on the floor, no bed, just a folded blanket, I felt the ache of the wood under my back, and for the first time, it didn't feel like punishment. It felt honest. Somewhere outside, an owl called once and then again, like it was counting the seconds between what was and what could be. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Tomorrow." That's when I heard it. The faint scrape of boots on gravel again. I rose quietly and peered through the cracked window. The same figure was there, standing by the gate, moonlight catching the silver in his hair. He didn't move closer, just tipped his head once, the kind of nod people give when they've seen enough of the world to understand pain without asking questions. Then he disappeared into the dark. I should have been afraid, but I wasn't, because somehow, even from that distance, it felt like someone was keeping watch. And deep down, I knew Ethan had no idea who he'd left me beside. He thought he'd abandoned me in a ruined house. He didn't know he'd left me next door to a reckoning. I woke up to the sound of rain tapping on the tin roof. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. The smell of wet earth and smoke from last night's fire filled the room. Then the memories came back. The drive, the words, the dust settling as his car disappeared. My son had left me here, and somehow I was still breathing. I pushed myself up, my joints protesting. The floor was cold, and the morning light leaking through the cracked window looked pale and weak, like it wasn't sure it wanted to start the day either. I found an old tin cup on the counter, wiped the dust off, and boiled water for tea. The first sip tasted like rust, but it was warm, and that was enough. As the fire snapped, I thought back to the years that led me here, not in bitterness, but in disbelief. How does love rot without you hearing it creak? After Paul passed, the condo felt too big. Ethan offered to help. He said, "Mom, don't live alone. Come stay with us." I thought it was kindness. It was convenient. At first, it was little things, sharing the kitchen, buying groceries, folding laundry. But slowly, I stopped being a guest and started being the help. My pension went into the family account, which meant Ethan and Abby's dinners out, their vacations, their endless upgrades that made life easier for everyone but me. When Abby got promoted, she said, "You don't mind moving into the smaller room, right? It's just temporary." That temporary closet became my world for almost 5 years. I folded their towels, washed their dishes, lived quietly so they could live loudly. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace. It comes from being erased. That's the silence I lived in. I remember one night when the lights went out during a storm. I lit a candle and found Ethan sitting at the kitchen counter, scrolling through his phone by flashlight. He didn't even look up when he said, "Mom, could you make Abby some tea? She's anxious again." I did. Because that's what mothers do. We keep serving, even when our hands are shaking. Now, standing in that ruined house, I realized I'd been living like a ghost long before Ethan drove me here. The only difference was that ghosts at least get remembered in stories. I had just been convenient. The rain stopped by mid-morning. I walked outside to explore what I'd been given. A sagging porch, a small patch of wild grass, a rusted mailbox half buried in mud. Inside it was a nest of twigs and a single feather. Someone used to live here. Someone gave up. Not me, not this time. Behind the house, I found a vegetable patch gone feral, vines curling like green veins through the soil. Potatoes, maybe, or onions. Hard to tell. I dug around with my hands until dirt filled the cracks in my nails. When I pulled out a small, misshapen potato, I laughed. It felt ridiculous, holy and human all at once, a heartbeat from the earth. By afternoon, the clouds broke open into sunlight. I sat on the porch with the cup of metallic tea, staring at the horizon where the road disappeared. I wondered if Ethan looked back, even once. I doubted it. He probably told Abby, "She's fine. Mom's always fine." He never understood that fine was just a word I used to keep him from feeling guilty. The quiet pressed in again, heavy but not unbearable. I opened my bag, the same one he'd carried out of the car, and found the photo album I hadn't seen in years. My wedding picture was still there. Paul's tie crooked, my veil lopsided, both of us laughing too hard to care. I traced his face with my finger. "You'd have known what to say," I whispered. Outside, I heard the faint creak of the old gate again, the same sound I'd heard the night before. This time, footsteps followed. I froze. A knock, light but firm. When I opened the door, the man from the fence stood there holding a small bucket. His hair was silver in the daylight, eyes pale blue, like water that's seen storms. "Morning," he said. "Your well's running cloudy. Thought you could use this." He handed me the bucket, clear, fresh water that smelled of stone and distance. I blinked. "You live nearby?" "2 houses over. Name's Cole." "Thank you," I said, unsure what else to offer. He nodded once, a quiet kind of politeness. "If the stove smokes, open the flue by the back hinge. Saves you a headache." Then he tipped his hat, an actual hat, like something from another time, and walked away before I could ask how he knew my stove smoked. For a long moment, I just stood there, fingers wrapped around the metal handle of the bucket, water cool against my skin. A stranger had done more for me in 2 minutes than my own son had in years. I spent the afternoon cleaning. Dust rose like ghosts as I swept. I found old nails, cracked plates, a jar of buttons, a half-burnt Bible with someone's name written inside, Margaret M. I wondered if she'd loved this place once, if she'd been left here, too. When the sun started setting, the walls glowed gold, soft and forgiving. I boiled some of the potatoes I'd dug up. They tasted like smoke and salt, better than anything I'd eaten in months. I thought about Ethan and Abby eating in their glass kitchen, their designer plates and perfect lighting. I wondered if the food tasted as good when you'd stolen someone else's piece to get it. By nightfall, the house felt less haunted. My hands ached, but my heart felt lighter. Work does that. It reminds you you're still here. I sat by the fire again, the old phone in my hand. I flipped it open and saw the same black screen. No bars. The world still didn't want to hear me. I went outside, following the faint hum of crickets, and walked toward the ridge where I'd seen the shimmer of signal the night before. The moon was bright enough to see my breath. Halfway up, I stopped to catch it, and that's when I saw it. A light, just over the trees, flickering in rhythm. Not the moon, not lightning. A flashlight. Someone signaling. 3 slow blinks. Pause. Then 3 more. I didn't move. The light pointed toward the woods near Cole's house. Then it vanished. I stood there, heart pounding in my chest, the night suddenly alive with whispers. Was it him? Or someone else who knew I'd been left here? The wind carried the smell of smoke. Wood, not fire. Controlled. Someone nearby was awake, watching. I turned back toward the shack, the flashlight's pattern still burned behind my eyes. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't as alone as Ethan wanted me to be, and for the first time, that didn't scare me. It comforted me, because deep down, something told me the neighbor knew far more than he was letting on, and one day soon, I'd find out why. The next morning came with a silence so thick it almost hummed. The air felt colder, sharper, the kind of air that reminds you you're still alive just by breathing it. I didn't sleep much. My mind kept replaying that light from the ridge. 3 slow flashes. Pause. 3 again. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. I boiled water on the stove and poured it into the same tin cup, watching steam curl like ghosts. My hands shook a little, not from fear, but from curiosity. I wanted to know who else was out there. The only other person I'd seen was Cole, the quiet man with eyes like a winter sky. Maybe it was him, or maybe someone else knew I was here, abandoned, forgotten, and alone. I stepped outside. The morning mist clung to the ground, wrapping the grass in silver. Across the field, Cole's house stood like a silhouette carved from fog. A column of smoke rose from his chimney, steady and straight. He was awake. I decided to walk over, not to pry, just to say thank you properly. The path between our houses was narrow and half-eaten by weeds. Every step made the dew soak through my shoes. When I reached his gate, I hesitated. There was a mailbox made from an old oil can, painted blue and dented from years of weather. On it was a hand-painted name, Cole R. Mercer. Mercer. The name rang faintly in my memory, though I couldn't place it. Before I could knock, I heard his voice. "Morning, Evelyn." He was standing on the porch, hammer in hand, patching up a loose shutter. His tone was calm, grounded, the way people talk when they've seen enough storms to know which ones are worth fearing. "You're up early," he said. "So are you," I replied, smiling faintly. "I wanted to thank you for the water." "Wasn't much," he shrugged. "Old wells can be tricky. Thought I'd save you the trouble." "Still," I said, "kindness isn't common anymore." He gave a small smile. "Depends where you look." We stood there for a moment, the silence between us comfortable. Then he said, almost casually, "You came here with your son." The words caught me off guard. "Yes, you saw?" He nodded, eyes flicking toward the dirt road. "Didn't look like a visit." I exhaled slowly. "No, it wasn't." He didn't ask anything else. He didn't need to. Somehow, he already understood. "Cole," I said after a pause, "last night I saw a light, flashing, from over there." I pointed toward the ridge behind his house. 3 blinks, pause, 3 again. "Do you know anyone out that way?" His hammer froze mid-air. "You saw that?" "Yes." He lowered his arm and set the hammer down. "No one lives up that ridge anymore. Hasn't for years. But sometimes you'll see lights. Hunters, maybe. Or something else." Something else. The way he said it, low, deliberate, sent a chill through me. He noticed. "Don't worry," he said softly. "Nobody around here bothers me, and they won't bother you." There was something in his voice, quiet but certain, that made me believe him. He walked down the steps and offered me a jar. Inside was honey, thick and golden. "Trade," he said, "for the tea you mentioned last night." I smiled. Deal. When I got back home, I placed the jar on my counter like it was a treasure. I hadn't realized how long it had been since someone gave me something with no strings attached. I spent the rest of the day cleaning the second room, the one with the broken bed frame. As I swept, I found a small wooden chest under the floorboard. My heart skipped. Inside were old photographs, a family on the porch, a woman in a gingham dress holding a baby, a man standing by the same well I'd just used. Their smiles were soft, almost shy. One photo had writing on the back, "Margaret and Thomas, summer 1948. Margaret. The same name from the burnt Bible. Whoever she was, this had been her home. I sat there for a long time, staring at their faces, wondering if she had felt the same loneliness I did, or if she'd been happy here once. As the sun dipped lower, I heard a knock. It was Cole again, holding a small toolbox. "Mind if I take a look at that roof?" he asked. Saw smoke coming out where it shouldn't. I wanted to say no, to protect what little privacy I had left, but something about his offer, so simple, so human, made me nod. He climbed up with the ease of someone used to working with his hands. I stood below, watching the sunlight glint off his tools. He wasn't just fixing shingles, he was giving this broken place a pulse again. When he came down, he wiped his hands on a rag. "You'll be fine for the next storm." "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. He looked at me for a moment, like he wanted to say something more. Then he said, "You should know. I was sheriff here once, a long time ago, before the town dried up." That explained the authority in his voice, the quiet confidence. "What happened to it?" I asked. He looked out toward the ridge. People left, some because they wanted to, some because they were made to. Made to? He met my eyes. "This land's full of stories, some good, some not. You'll hear them if you stay long enough." Then he tipped his hat again and left. When darkness came, I sat on the porch, staring at the ridge. The world had gone quiet except for the chorus of crickets. I half expected to see the flashing light again, and I did. 3 slow blinks. Pause. 3 again. Only this time there were 2 lights, one higher, one lower. I rose, heart pounding. The rhythm was identical, deliberate, coded. But now it wasn't just a signal. It was a conversation. Someone was answering. I turned toward Cole's house. His windows were dark, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was awake, that he saw it too, and was waiting for something. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind whispered like a voice just out of reach. But beneath the fear, something else was growing. A kind of strength I hadn't felt in years. The kind that blooms when life tries to bury you and you dig your way out instead. Ethan thought he'd left me here to fade, but I wasn't fading. I was watching, and I wasn't the only one. By the 4th morning, I stopped jumping at every sound. Silence was no longer the enemy. It had become a companion that told me when something didn't belong. That's how I noticed it. A hum on the wind. A car engine. Slow. Cautious. I stepped onto the porch. The road was empty, but I could see a faint trail of dust curling in the distance. Then it stopped, like whoever it was had parked beyond the bend. I waited. Nothing. Only the sound of the well chain creaking in the breeze. After a few minutes, I went back inside and lit the stove. The house still smelled of damp wood, but the fire chased the chill away. I'd begun writing lists, things to fix, things to buy if I ever got to town again. The act of planning felt like defiance, because for the first time in years, I had something Ethan could never take back. Control. While the kettle warmed, I opened my old flip phone. No signal. Still. But habit made me check every morning, just in case the valley decided to give me a whisper of the outside world. At the top of the ridge yesterday, I'd almost caught 1 bar, enough to see the faint outline of my lawyer's number. That was all I needed. I'd try again today. Before leaving, I wrapped a scarf around my neck and stepped out into the morning fog. The air was sharp, tasting of pine and old rain. As I climbed the hill, the view opened up, a quilt of green and brown, stitched with streams that glittered in the weak sun. When I reached the cedar tree at the top, my phone blinked to life. 1 bar. I dialed the number. "Marcus Jones, attorney at law," came the voice, brisk and clear. "Marcus, it's Evelyn Reed." A pause, then surprise. "Mrs. Reed, it's been years. Are you all right?" "Not quite," I said. "I need your help. My son. He's done something. I don't know everything yet, but I think he's taken out a loan using my condo as collateral." The words sounded surreal as I said them out loud. He was quiet for a moment. "Do you have any documents? Proof?" "Not yet, but I can find them. I just need you to start looking, quietly." I will, he promised. Send me whatever you can as soon as you're in range. Thank you, Marcus. I hung up, heart pounding. The first step of my plan was in motion. When I came down from the ridge, Cole was waiting at the bottom of the path, leaning on his fence like he'd been there for a while. You go hiking early every day? He asked with a half smile. Not hiking, I said. Just climbing to think. He nodded. Thinking's dangerous out here. Too much quiet. It makes the truth louder. I tilted my head. What truth is that? He smiled faintly but didn't answer. Instead, he gestured toward his porch. Are you still planning to fix that stovepipe? You'll need tar. I've got some in the shed. He helped me carry it back, insisting on patching the crack himself. His hands were steady, practiced. As he worked, I asked, You said you used to be a sheriff. Why'd you quit? He paused, eyes narrowing slightly at the edge of the roof. Didn't quit. Wasn't wanted anymore. The county line shifted, funding ran out, and the people who used to shake my hand stopped answering my calls. So you stayed. He nodded once. Someone has to keep watch. Over what? Over who? The way he said it made me shiver. When he finished, he looked at me seriously. If anyone comes down that road again, anyone you don't recognize, don't talk. Just go inside and lock your door, understand? I swallowed. Should I be worried? Not yet. He left without explaining more, but the warning sat in my stomach like a stone. That night, I sat by the fire, staring at the honey jar he'd given me. The golden light reflected on the walls, flickering like candlelight. I couldn't tell if Cole was being protective or secretive, maybe both. But one thing was certain, he knew more about this place than he wanted to say. I spent the next 2 days rebuilding small pieces of life. I washed the curtains, rearranged the furniture, and even found an old radio in the attic. It didn't pick up any stations, but when I turned the dial, static filled the air. The kind of sound that makes you feel less alone, even if it's meaningless. On the 3rd day, something strange happened. I was chopping wood behind the house when I saw movement near the ridge. A flash of white fabric, there and gone. I froze. Then I heard it. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. A car door. Then another. I ran to the porch. Through the haze of heat and dust, I saw 2 figures walking toward the bend. Too far to recognize, but their pace, hurried, nervous, made my stomach twist. I backed into the house and peeked through the window. The figures stopped near the mailbox looking at my property. Then one of them bent down, slipped something under the gate, and both walked away. When the road was empty again, I went to check. A white envelope. No address, no name, just my own handwriting on the front. Evelyn Reed. My heart pounded as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. We need to talk. Don't involve anyone else. Ethan. I felt the world tilt. He'd found me. I looked toward Cole's house. His porch light was on, even though it was still daylight. I wanted to tell him, but his warning echoed in my head. Don't talk. Just lock your door. So I did. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps, every creak like a knock. Around midnight, I saw it again through the window, the flickering light from the ridge. But this time, it wasn't 3 blinks. It was one long flash, pause, then 2 quick ones, a new message, different rhythms, and I realized something. Cole wasn't just a neighbor, he was signaling someone. Maybe he'd been doing it every night. I just started noticing too late. I sat by the window until dawn, the pattern repeating faintly in my mind. 1 long, 2 short, 1 long, 2 short. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. A code. And suddenly, I wasn't sure anymore whether Cole Mercer was protecting me or watching me for someone else. I didn't move for hours after finding that note. It sat on the table like a live wire, small but humming with danger. We need to talk. That was all Ethan had written. No apology, no explanation. Just that quiet arrogance that had always assumed I'd listen. By noon, my stomach was tight with unease. Every crunch of gravel made me glance toward the road. I tried to distract myself, washing, sweeping, even peeling potatoes, but the silence between each small noise felt louder than anything else. Then around 3, I heard it. A car engine. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. The same silver sedan. His sedan. My breath caught. The sound of tires on dirt. The low hum of an expensive engine that didn't belong on roads like this. I walked to the window and peered through the cracked glass. Ethan got out first, phone in hand, his shirt crisp, his expression tight. Behind him, Abby stepped out in designer sunglasses and a coat too clean for dust. Her hand rested on her stomach in that careful way that made sure everyone remembered she was pregnant. I should have felt something. Anger, grief, relief. But there was only cold clarity. They stood by the gate, glancing around like they were afraid to touch anything. Ethan finally pushed it open. The hinges squealed, protesting the intrusion. "Mom!" he called, his voice lighter than usual, like he was pretending this was all just a misunderstanding. I stayed on the porch, arms crossed. "You found me." He smiled, but it was thin and false. "Yeah, I realized maybe we handled things badly. Thought we could talk." "Talk," I repeated. "Now you want to talk." Abby stepped forward, her perfume cutting through the air, sharp and floral. "Mrs. Reed," she said with exaggerated politeness, "we came because this isn't healthy for you. Living out here. You should be home." "Home?" I looked around. "Funny. I thought this was home now. You gave it to me, remember?" Ethan sighed, rubbing his temple. "Mom, please. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You know we're just trying to help." "Help?" I echoed. "Like you helped by cleaning out my account? By using my name to take out a mortgage I never signed? By driving me here and leaving me on my birthday like a stray dog?" His jaw tightened. "That's not fair. You were sick. You don't remember things right." Abby's voice slid in, soft but poisonous. "You signed those papers yourself, remember? We wouldn't have done anything without your consent." I looked straight at her. "When did I had pneumonia? When I was half delirious in bed. You slipped documents under my hand and told me they were tax forms. That's what you call consent?" Her mouth twitched. For the first time, I saw it. Fear. Tiny but real. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Mom, this isn't the way. You're making this worse. There's still a way out. Call off the lawyer. Let me fix it." "Fix it," I repeated, almost laughing. "You don't fix betrayal, Ethan. You bury it and build something better above the bones." "Mom, stop." His voice broke. "Please, you're—" But before he could finish, another voice cut through the air. "Everything all right here?" We all turned. Cole stood by the fence, calm as always, one hand resting on the gate. The late sunlight caught the side of his face, making his eyes flash like steel. Ethan stiffened. "This is private." Cole didn't blink. "It's my land past that fence, so if you're planning to yell, it's not private anymore." Abby gave a strained smile. "We're family, sir. Just talking." Cole's gaze moved from her to Ethan to me. "Looks more like cornering." Ethan's jaw flexed. "Who are you exactly?" Cole didn't answer right away. He stepped forward just enough for the light to catch the badge that still hung on his belt, tarnished but recognizable. "Used to be a sheriff here," he said quietly. "Still have friends who listen when I call." Abby paled. Ethan looked like he'd swallowed something sharp. I hadn't known Cole still carried that badge or that authority. "Maybe you two should head back," he said, his voice even but carrying weight. "Mrs. Reed doesn't look like she invited company." Ethan forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We're leaving soon." He turned to me, voice low. "Mom, this isn't over." "No," I said. "It isn't." They turned and walked back to the car, their footsteps crunching against the gravel like tiny cracks splitting through glass. Abby didn't look back. Ethan did, once. just long enough for me to see something flicker across his face. Not guilt, calculation. When the car disappeared down the road, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Cole stayed by the gate, watching the dust settle. "You okay?" he asked. "I should be asking you that," I said. "You didn't have to step in." He gave a half smile. "Old habits die hard." Then his tone shifted, quieter. "That boy of yours looks desperate. Desperate men make stupid choices. Keep your doors locked tonight." "I always do," I replied. He nodded once, then started back toward his house. I went inside, my pulse still racing. The kettle on the stove had gone cold. I reheated it just for something to do. Through the window, I could see the last light fading over the ridge, and faintly, just faintly, the same flash again. One long, two short. Cole's signal. This time, though, there was no reply. I sat by the window, the letter still on the table beside me. I didn't open it again. I didn't need to. I already knew what it meant. They weren't here to apologize. They were here to test me, to see if I'd break. But the woman they'd abandoned wasn't the same one they remembered, because I wasn't afraid of them anymore. And as the first stars appeared over the ridge, I caught sight of Cole standing on his porch, his flashlight in hand, shining once into the dark trees, and then lowering it slowly, like a warning. Whatever this was, it wasn't finished, but neither was I. The wind began to change that night. You can feel it before you hear it. That low vibration in the air, like the earth taking a breath before something breaks loose. By dawn, the trees were bending under a dark sky. A storm was coming. I'd seen enough of them growing up to know the signs. The silence between gusts was too still. The birds had gone. Even the old well chain had stopped clinking. I spent the morning pulling what I could inside: tools, dry wood, a stack of kindling. I latched the shutters, stuffed towels under the cracks in the door, and built a fire. The first drops hit the roof like pebbles. Then came the thunder. It wasn't just sound, it was presence. A growl that rolled through the valley and shook dust from the ceiling beams. The rain followed fast, hammering the roof, flooding the path outside. I could barely see beyond the porch. The world turned into a curtain of gray water. I sat near the fire, clutching my mug, watching the flames bow and sway with each gust that found its way through the chimney. I should have been afraid, but I wasn't. Storms had a strange honesty about them. Unlike people, they never pretend to be gentle. Still, I worried about Cole. His house stood closer to the ridge, and if lightning hit the old cedars. Then I saw it, through the sheets of rain, a flicker. Not lightning, not the reflection of a firelight. It was that same pattern again, one long flash, too short, but this time, it wasn't from the ridge. It was from inside the trees behind Cole's property. Someone, or something, was answering him. I grabbed my coat and flashlight before common sense could stop me. The door nearly flew off its hinges when I pushed it open, rain slamming my face like cold coins. The ground was already mud. My shoes sank with every step as I made my way toward his house. I could barely see through the downpour, but I followed the faint glow of his porch light like a beacon. When I reached it, I saw his door was wide open. "Cole?" I shouted, but the storm swallowed my voice. Inside, the air smelled of smoke and wet wood. His table was overturned. The flashlight he always carried lay on the floor, still blinking its code. One long, two short, over and over. "Cole!" I yelled again, louder this time. From somewhere deeper in the house came a sound, a low groan muffled by the wind. I moved toward it, careful but fast. His back room door was half shut. I pushed it open and froze. He was sitting against the wall, clutching his shoulder. Blood, dark and thin from the rain, seeped between his fingers. "Evelyn," he rasped, "you shouldn't be here. What happened?" "Someone was out there," he said through clenched teeth. "Near the ridge. I tried to stop them." "Stop who?" He shook his head. "Doesn't matter. They're gone." I looked around the room. There were footprints on the wooden floor, fresh and wet, too small to be his. "They broke in," I whispered. "Looking for something," he said grimly. "Didn't find it." "Find what?" He looked up at me, eyes sharper than I'd ever seen. "You need to listen carefully, Evelyn. There's a reason your son left you here. This place, it's not random." "What are you talking about?" He winced, pressing harder on his shoulder. "That shack of yours used to belong to Margaret Mercer, my wife's sister." I blinked. "Margaret? Mercer?" He nodded slowly. "She died here 30 years ago. They said it was an accident, a fall down the well, but it wasn't. There was a land dispute. A family she trusted tricked her out of her property deed. She fought back. Then one night she disappeared. The next morning they found her in the well." The room tilted. Margaret, the name from the Bible, from the photo. This had been her house. "What does that have to do with Ethan?" I asked, voice trembling. Cole looked at me like he was deciding whether to tell me everything. Then he said, "That same family, the one that took her land, owned your condo before your husband bought it, and the man who sold it to him was her cousin." I stared. "You're saying my property used to belong to your wife's family?" He nodded. "Which means your name's on the same deed line that her death was meant to erase." "I don't understand." "You don't have to. Just know that whoever broke in tonight wasn't after me. They were after you." The room fell silent except for the storm raging outside. Then I heard something, a faint engine starting in the distance. Cole looked toward the window. "They're leaving." "Who?" I demanded. He didn't answer. His face was pale. "Bottom drawer by the sink," he said. "First aid kit." I found it, gauze, antiseptic, and an old bottle of whiskey. He let me clean the wound in silence, flinching only once when the alcohol touched his skin. "You should go," he said afterward. "They might come back." "I'm not leaving you like this." His jaw tightened. "Then stay low. And if you hear engines again, don't open the door." I nodded, but I couldn't stop shaking. Not from the storm, from the feeling that the ground beneath my life had just shifted again. When the rain finally began to fade, I helped him to his chair. He looked older suddenly, not from the wound, but from whatever memory was weighing on him. "Cole," I said softly. "Who were they?" He met my eyes. "Let's just say your son isn't the only one who wants your house." I didn't know what that meant, not yet, but I knew this. The storm outside wasn't the worst one anymore. It was the one brewing between the lies that had built my whole life and the truth that was finally clawing its way out. As dawn crept over the hills, I looked out from his porch. The world was soaked, shining silver. Across the yard, my house stood dark and quiet, except for one thing. My door was open. Just an inch, but open. And on the porch, glistening in the rain, was a muddy footprint, small, feminine. Not mine. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled of thunder. Every drop that slid from the roof hit the ground with a sound that felt too loud, too deliberate, like the world was holding its breath and waiting for me to make the next move. I stood frozen on Cole's porch, staring at my own open door across the yard. One muddy footprint, small, sharp at the toe, narrow at the heel. A woman's shoe. "Cole?" I whispered, pointing. "Someone's been inside." He turned his head, face drawn with pain but eyes alert. "Go slow. Don't touch anything yet." "I have to see," I said. He tried to stand, but I stopped him. "You're hurt. Stay here." "Evelyn." "I'll be careful." Before he could argue, I was already stepping off the porch, the mud sucking at my shoes. The air was heavy, humming with leftover electricity. Every sense felt sharpened. I could hear the creak of my own floorboards before I even reached the house. The door swung open easily. Inside, everything looked too still. The fire had long died. The kettle sat cold. My photo album was on the table, but it wasn't where I'd left it. The pages were open, flipped halfway through, the photos glistening faintly with dampness. Someone had touched them. I walked further in, the faint smell of perfume, floral, expensive, hung in the air, a scent that didn't belong here. Abby. I felt my stomach twist. The couch cushion was moved, the drawer by the window slightly open. My scarf, the one Paul had given me, was on the floor, crumpled near the hearth. She'd been here, while I was with Cole. I picked up the scarf slowly, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from fury. I looked around again, this time noticing what was missing. The envelope, the one Ethan had left on the table. Gone. That was what she came for. But why? I stepped closer to the table and noticed something else. Faint watermarks. 2 rings, side by side. Coffee cups. She wasn't alone. I turned sharply toward the window, half expecting to see movement outside. But the world was empty. Only the hum of insects had returned, soft and mocking. Then, a voice behind me. "You shouldn't wander alone." I spun around so fast my vision blurred. Cole stood in the doorway, pale but upright, leaning against the frame. His shirt was damp with blood, his eyes steady. "You shouldn't be walking," I said. "You're hurt." He gave a faint smile. "Hurt doesn't stop habits. Found some tracks outside your fence. 2 sets, 1 lighter, 1 heavier. A man and a woman." "Ethan and Abby." He nodded slowly. "They parked off the road near the ridge. The woman came to your house. The man stayed by the car. To make sure I was gone." "Exactly." He limped closer, scanning the room. His gaze caught the open album. "They were looking for something." "The letter," I said. "Ethan left one. It's gone." "What did it say?" "Just a line. We need to talk, nothing else." Cole frowned. "That's not what he came for, then." "What do you mean?" He glanced toward the floor, then crouched, wincing, and brushed aside a bit of dirt by the wall. "Old houses like this hide things. Margaret used to keep documents on the floorboards, land deeds, letters." I knelt beside him. "You think they knew?" He nodded once. "If your son's been digging into records, maybe he found out about the Mercer property line. Maybe he realized your land is still tied to that case." "And if it is?" Cole's voice dropped low. "Then everything he built, the mortgage, the loans, it's all sitting on a dead woman's claim. He can't sell, can't build, can't even refinance without your signature. And if that comes to light, he loses everything." The words hit me like a slap. "He brought me here to keep me out of sight," I said slowly, the truth forming piece by piece, "so he could control the paperwork." Cole's eyes met mine. "And now he's back to make sure you can't contest it." For a moment I couldn't breathe. The betrayal had layers I hadn't even imagined. It wasn't just abandonment, it was elimination. Quiet, practical, disguised as care. A thunderclap rolled somewhere far away, the storm retreating. I felt tears sting my eyes, not from sadness, but from the sheer cruelty of it all. Cole touched my arm gently. "You still have proof. That album, the phone, the call to your lawyer, it's enough to start." I nodded, though my voice felt hollow. "And what about them? They'll come back." "Then let them," he said simply. "This time, we'll be ready." He straightened, slower this time, his jaw set. "There's something you should see, down by the well." We stepped outside together. The world was washed clean, the air sharp with the scent of wet leaves. The sky had started to clear, streaks of pale blue cutting through the clouds. The old well stood behind the house, covered by a wooden lid warped with age. Moss climbed the stones. Cole knelt beside it, brushing away mud. "When they said Margaret fell, I didn't believe it. I came back years later, looked for answers. Found this." He pried open the lid. The rope inside had long rotted, but there was something else, a rusted tin box wedged between the stones. He pulled it out carefully and handed it to me. "Go on," he said. I opened it. Inside were folded papers, sealed in plastic. They were brittle but legible. Property title, Mercer Estate. and below that, written in faded ink, to Evelyn Reed. My heart stopped. She left it to me, I whispered. Why? Cole's face softened. Because you were her goddaughter. Margaret named you before she died. You were a child then, too young to remember. Your mother never told you? I shook my head, dizzy. No, she never said a word. He looked toward the road. Now you know why they came. Ethan must have found out. He thought if you disappeared quietly, he could claim what was yours. The world swayed beneath me. Grief, anger, disbelief colliding all at once. Cole put a hand on my shoulder. It's not over, but you're not alone anymore. I clutched the papers to my chest, the plastic cold against my skin. The truth weighed heavy, but it also felt like armor. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving, I was remembering who I was. As we walked back toward the porch, the sun broke through the clouds, spilling gold across the valley. But just as we reached the steps, I saw movement at the edge of the trees, a car's reflection, catching light. They were still here, watching, waiting. The sunlight didn't last long. By afternoon, the clouds folded back over the hills, and the air turned that flat gray that makes everything look like memory. Cole stood on his porch with binoculars, scanning the tree line. I watched from mine, the deed papers still pressed against my chest like a heartbeat. They're out there, he said quietly. Not close enough to act, just watching. Ethan, I whispered. He lowered the binoculars. And his wife. Cars idling half a mile up the bend. They think they're invisible. What do they want now? Whatever you found. I looked down at the tin box. Then maybe it's time we show them something worth finding. Cole's mouth curved in the faintest smile. You thinking what I'm thinking? Something that looks real enough to... Chase, I said. Something they can't resist. He nodded once, the old sheriff still flickering behind his calm eyes. A trap, then. That evening, we worked quietly. The air smelled of wet earth and kerosene. Cole's shed was a museum of forgotten tools, hammers, chains, even an ancient Polaroid camera that still worked after a little coaxing. We'll give them proof, he said. Fake proof. Something that says you hid the original deed somewhere else. I tore a blank sheet from an old ledger and wrote in careful script, Margaret's last signature lies beneath the roots that never burned. Cole whistled softly. Cryptic enough to sound real. We folded the note, slid it into an envelope identical to the one Ethan had left, and smeared the edges with a little mud for authenticity. Then we placed it inside my house, right where Abby had found the last one. Cole leaned against the wall, testing his shoulder. Are you sure about this? I've been sure of nothing for a long time, I said, but I'm done being hunted. Night came early. The wind picked up again, whispering through the cracks like it wanted to eavesdrop. We turned off all lights except one, a single lamp by the window casting my silhouette across the room. Cole waited in the shadows outside, a flashlight and his old rifle beside him. I sat by the table pretending to read the fake note in plain sight. At first, there was only silence. Then, near midnight, gravel crunched. A car door. My pulse thudded. Through the window, I saw headlights flicker once before going dark. Two shapes emerged from the road, one tall, one smaller, Ethan and Abby. They moved like ghosts, deliberate, rehearsed. Abby carried a small flashlight, the beam thin and nervous. I let them get close enough to the porch before standing. The floor creaked, just loud enough. They froze. Mom, Ethan called softly. It's me, don't be scared. I didn't answer. He took another step. Please, I just want to talk. Then his eyes caught the note on the table. He stiffened. There, that's it. Abby whispered, Are you sure? Yes, stay quiet. They slipped inside. I stepped out of the shadows. Looking for something? Ethan spun around, eyes wide. Abby gasped, the flashlight shaking. Mom, Save it, I said. You wanted my signature. You wanted my silence. Now you want what's under the roots that never burned? He blinked, confused, then furious. "What are you talking about?" "The note," I said coolly. "You left one for me. I thought I'd return the favor." For a second, the only sound was the rain beginning again outside. Then another voice came from the doorway. "Hands where I can see them." Cole stepped in, rifle steady. Ethan's composure cracked. "What is this? Are you planning to shoot me?" "No," Cole said. "Just keeping you honest." Abby's voice wavered. "We didn't mean any harm." "Breaking and entering counts as harm," Cole interrupted. "So does fraud. You want to add intimidation to the list?" Ethan's face went red. "You think anyone's going to believe some washed-up sheriff and a crazy old woman?" Something inside me snapped. "Crazy?" I said quietly. "You think stealing from your own mother makes you sane?" He took a step toward me, but Cole cocked the rifle just once, the sound cutting through the tension like a blade. Ethan froze. I met his eyes. "You left me here to disappear, but you forgot one thing. I'm still alive, and I remember everything." For a heartbeat, he looked like the boy I used to hold, scared, cornered, small. Then the mask slid back into place. "You don't know what you're doing, Mom. You'll ruin everything." "I already have," I said. "My lawyer has the call logs. The bank's getting a visit tomorrow." His breath hitched. "You—" Cole interrupted. "Time to leave." Ethan hesitated, then turned to Abby. "Let's go." But as they stepped back, the floorboard under Ethan's boot gave a sharp crack, a hidden compartment splitting open. A small wooden box rolled out, scattering dust. Cole and I both stared. It wasn't part of the trap. Ethan bent to grab it, but I was faster. I kicked it away, the lid flying open. Inside was a single photograph. Margaret Mercer, smiling beside a man I didn't recognize, and a folded sheet of yellowed paper. Cole reached for it. "Let me see." He unfolded it carefully, eyes scanning the faded ink. His face went pale. "What is it?" I asked. He looked at me, then at Ethan. "A confession, Margaret's, addressed to the county office. She names the man who forged her death certificate and the family that paid him." Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. "Don't read it." Cole's jaw tightened. Too late. I stared at Ethan. "The family she named, it's yours, isn't it?" He didn't answer. Abby burst into tears. "Ethan, please." He turned on her. "Quiet." Cole stepped forward. "Son, walk out that door before I decide to remember how to make an arrest." Ethan's mouth twisted. "Do you think this changes anything? You have no idea what you're dealing with." "Neither did Margaret," Cole said. "And look how she ended up." For the first time, Ethan looked afraid. Really afraid. He backed toward the door, rain slashing behind him. Then he turned and vanished into the night, Abby stumbling after him. The engine started seconds later, tires spitting gravel, red taillights fading into darkness. When silence finally returned, I felt my knees give way. Cole caught my arm before I fell. "It's over," he said softly. "No," I whispered, staring at the open box. "It's just beginning." Because Margaret's confession wasn't just about her murder. The last line said something else, something that made the blood in my veins go cold. If this reaches the wrong hands, they'll come for whoever carries my name. And now that person was me. The morning after they fled, the valley looked clean, deceptively calm, washed by rain and silence. But I knew better. Storms don't end when the thunder stops. They end when the truth finally hits ground. Cole and I sat at the kitchen table, the confession letter between us, edges still damp from the night before. His coffee was steamed. Mine sat untouched. "She wrote this 30 years ago," he said, voice low, "but it never left the property. The man she accused was my deputy back then, Harold Beach. He vanished 2 days after her death." "And the family she named?" I asked, even though I already knew. He met my eyes. "The same bloodline that married into yours." I felt the air leave my lungs. Ethan's father, Paul, had always said his people came from old landowners upstate. I never thought to ask what kind of owners they were. Cole folded the letter. Your son might not even understand what he's part of. Families like that, they pass down money, not guilt. By the time it reaches the next generation, they forget who paid the price. I shook my head. No, he knew. Maybe not all of it, but enough to hide me. He studied me quietly. What do you want to do, Evelyn? It was a simple question, but the weight of it pressed like stone. For years, I'd been told what to want, what to forgive, what to survive. Now, for the first time, it was my choice. I want to finish what Margaret started, I said. By noon, I was on the ridge again. Same cedar tree, same wind, but I wasn't climbing for hope this time. I was climbing for war. The one bar of signal appeared, flickering, fragile. I hit the dial. Marcus Jones, came the familiar voice. It's me, I said. I found it. The deed, the confession, everything. He inhaled sharply. You have physical documents? Yes, I'm mailing them today. And Marcus, I want the county clerk, the bank, and the mortgage firm copied on every page. Evelyn, he said softly, you understand what this means? Once this goes public, your son will face what he made, I said flatly. And maybe then the rest of us can stop being buried by ghosts. He didn't argue. I'll handle the filings. I ended the call and looked out at the valley below. For the first time, the view didn't look lonely. It looked earned. That night, the car came back. I heard it before I saw it. Slower this time, hesitant. Cole was already on his porch, light off, watching. He'd refused to rest since the night of the break-in. When the headlights swept over the road, I recognized the dented hood and cracked mirror. Ethan's sedan. He stepped out alone. No Abby. No bravado this time. His shoulders slumped like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Stay here, Cole murmured. I can handle it, I said. He hesitated, then nodded once. I'll be close. I met Ethan halfway down the path. The moonlight fell across his face, pale and wet-eyed. Mom, he said, voice raw, I'm sorry. It almost worked. That old reflex, the part of me that wanted to soften. But I'd learned something about apologies. They're worthless if they arrive only after you've lost. The power to lie. Are you? I asked quietly. He swallowed hard. I didn't know what I was getting into. The deal with Abby's uncle. He said it was just a transfer, some paperwork. Then, when I realized what it was, I panicked. I thought if I brought you here, you'd be safe from them. Safe? I repeated. You left me in a broken house with no phone, no food, no heat. I had to make it look real, he said desperately. They were watching. They wanted your signature. I told them I could get it, but when I couldn't, they threatened me. Abby, too. Abby, I said slowly. She came back here. She took the envelope. He nodded. They told her to. They said the papers were worth millions. Oil rights, land leases. I didn't even know half of it. Mom, I swear, I didn't mean for it to go this far. His voice cracked, and for a heartbeat, I saw the boy I'd once carried through fevers and nightmares. The same eyes, the same tremble, but there's a kind of damage that doesn't heal with tears. You had choices, I said. You could have told me the truth. You could have asked for help. I thought I was helping, he whispered. I thought if you didn't know, you'd be safe. From your guilt? He looked down, rain dripping from his hair, though the sky was dry. I mailed the papers, I said. The lawyer has everything. His head snapped up. What? You wanted to bury the past. Instead, it's coming for you. He stepped closer, desperate. You don't understand. These people don't stop. You think this is about me? It's bigger than that. You've just painted a target on both of us. Then maybe, I said, it's time they see who they're shooting at. Behind him, a light flared. Cole's flashlight. He was standing at the gate, rifle slung over his shoulder. Ethan turned, exhaling like a man facing his own reflection. "You called him too?" "I didn't have to," I said. "He's been watching over me since you stopped." For a moment, none of us moved. The night felt suspended. Even the crickets held their breath. Then Ethan said quietly, "They'll come for the documents. You need to leave." "I'm done running," I said. He shook his head. "Then you don't know them like I do." "Maybe not," Cole said from behind him, "but I know what men like them fear most: daylight." Ethan's eyes flicked toward him, then back to me. "Do you really trust him?" "Yes," I said, "because he has nothing left to lose, and that makes him dangerous." He let out a broken laugh. "Guess it runs in the family." Then he reached into his pocket. My body tensed until I saw what he pulled out. A folded photograph, me and him, years ago. His 6th birthday, frosting on his nose. He handed it to me silently. "I was going to throw it out," he said. "Couldn't do it." I held the photo in my shaking hands. "You were my whole world once." "And you were mine," he said, until I started thinking I deserved more. He turned toward the car, shoulders heavy. "I'll tell them it's over, that the documents are gone. Maybe they'll believe me." "And if they don't?" I asked. He gave a small, hollow smile. "Then I guess I finally get what I earned." He drove off into the dark, taillights fading like dying embers. I stood there long after the sound disappeared, the photo clutched to my chest. Cole came up beside me. "You think he's telling the truth?" I looked at the horizon where the first trace of dawn touched the clouds. "For once," I said, "I think he is." But I also knew something else. People who work for greed don't stop just because you've exposed the crime. Sometimes, justice wakes bigger monsters than guilt ever could. A week passed before the valley saw another car. The mornings had grown colder, fog crawling low through the grass like breath over glass. I spent those days in a strange kind of peace, half watchful, half free. Cole and I repaired the well cover, cleaned the soot from the stove, and stacked fresh wood. He moved slower now, but the strength in his hands never seemed to fade. The documents had already reached Marcus, who confirmed what we both knew: the confession, the deeds, the forged transfers. It was enough to unravel decades of quiet theft. The county opened an investigation. The name Mercer returned to public record, and with it, mine. I thought that would be the end of it. But stories like ours never end neatly. They taper, like smoke that refuses to vanish. 3 nights after the investigation began, I woke to a sound, faint, metallic. The old gate creaking. I lit the lamp and moved to the window. A car was parked by the fence. Not Ethan's sedan, a black SUV, windows tinted. No plates I could see. My pulse quickened. I grabbed the flashlight and slipped my boots on, stepping out onto the porch. The air was thick with mist, the kind that swallowed light. I could barely see 10 feet ahead. "Cole," I called quietly. He appeared seconds later, coat half-buttoned, rifle slung low. Saw it too. The SUV door opened. A man stepped out, tall, wearing a dark coat and a cap pulled low. His hands were empty, but his posture said he was no stranger to authority. "Evening," he called. "Mrs. Reed?" I nodded warily. "Who's asking?" He flashed a badge, faintly catching the light. "Detective Harmon, County Special Investigations. We got your lawyer's package." Cole lowered his rifle an inch but didn't relax. "That took you long enough." The detective nodded. "We had to verify the papers. They're real, which means a lot of powerful people just got very nervous." He looked at me. "Your son turned himself in this morning." The words hit me like cold rain. "Ethan?" "Yes, ma'am. He gave a statement. Said he forged your signature under pressure. Name the investors who pushed him to do it. He's cooperating." I stood silent. Cole asked what I couldn't. "And the others?" "They're being picked up tonight," the detective said. "Some already tried to run. We'll get them." He paused. "Your name's been cleared, Mrs. Reed. Everything that was stolen from you, the condo, the land, the trust, it's being restored. You'll get it all back. I should have felt relief, maybe joy. But what I felt instead was weight, the kind that settles when truth finally arrives and doesn't change what's already broken. "Can I see him?" I asked. The detective nodded. He asked for that. The county jail smelled of rain and rust. They put me in a small room with a glass divider. On the other side sat Ethan. No lawyer, no wife, just him. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not younger, smaller, as if shame had stolen inches from his height. "Mom," he said softly. I sat down across from him. "You look tired." He gave a weak smile. "I am, but it's different now. No pretending." For a while, we just looked at each other. Mother and son, silence doing what words couldn't. "They'll probably give me 5 years," he said. "Maybe less if I keep talking." "You'll serve what's fair," I said, "and then you'll have to live with what's left." He nodded. "I deserve that." He looked at me, eyes bright. "I kept the house deed in your name, even when they told me to change it. I didn't touch that. I couldn't." A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. "You shouldn't have had to touch any of it, Ethan." "I know." He leaned closer to the glass. "Mom, I'm sorry. For all of it." I wanted to say I forgave him, but forgiveness isn't a word you hand out like charity. It's something that grows or doesn't. So I said the truth instead. "You're still my son." He pressed his forehead to the glass. "That's more than I deserve." And for the first time since the day he left me by that ruined house, I saw the boy again, the one who used to run barefoot through the yard, pockets full of stones and promises. By the time I returned home, the valley was alive with wind again. Cole was waiting on the porch, a pot of coffee between 2 mugs. "How bad?" he asked. "Not as bad as it could be," I said. "Not as good as it should be." He nodded. "That's justice for you. Never clean, just finished." We sat in silence for a while, watching the fog roll off the trees. Then he said quietly, "You could go back now. The city, your apartment. You're a wealthy woman again." I smiled faintly. "And what would I do there? Drink lattes and pretend the walls don't echo?" He chuckled. "Fair point. I think I'll stay," I said. "This house has too many ghosts to leave alone. Maybe it's time someone lived here again, properly." Cole raised his mug. "To stay. To survive," I corrected gently. We clinked cups, the sound small but real. Weeks passed. The valley grew warmer. The garden I'd planted, the one that started as weeds and stubborn soil, began to bloom. I painted the porch white, fixed the window panes, and hung new curtains. Sometimes Cole would visit in the evenings, bringing honey or apples from the next town. Other times, we'd just sit, in silence, watching the sky trade its gold for indigo. One morning, a letter came. No return address. Inside was a folded drawing, a child's crayon sketch, a woman, a man, and a boy holding hands under a crooked sun. In the corner, written in messy pencil, "For Grandma, from Lily, Abby's daughter, my granddaughter." For a long time, I just stared at it, tears spilling silently down my cheeks. Then I pinned it above the fireplace where the light hit it every morning. Because some stories don't end in revenge. They end in reminders of what's broken and what still breathes. It's strange how life circles back. The ruined house that once felt like exile had become the one place I could finally call home. The past didn't disappear. It just stopped owning me. Sometimes, when the sun sets low and the forest hums, I still see that first night in my mind. Ethan's car disappearing in dust, my reflection in the window, the echo of abandonment. But now, when I see it, there's no bitterness left, only understanding. Because pain, like property, can be reclaimed if you're willing to dig deep enough to find where it was buried. And I did.